Hello, gamers! Welcome back to the Game Shop's basement, where the grumpy old GMs run GM's Academy and work on the Loft project. This video is for GM's Academy. We're going to talk about balancing encounters. This is something that people ask me a lot, and specifically people bring it up. My Patreon students bring it up, and I see lots of YouTube videos on it, lots of people talking about this thing. Apparently it comes up in a lot of surveys as to what new Dungeon Masters are concerned about is balancing encounters. Well, I have the answer, and it's not because I'm some kind of genius or something, or I figured out something nobody else could figure out. No, nothing like that. I have the answer because the answer was written about 30 to 40 years ago. I just still have the books. I remember I've been doing it for 40 years. So the original first generation of writers for our favorite game, they would write at the beginning of modules and stuff, they would write reasoning for their design. And in these original adventures, there were ranges of, like this adventure is for levels 6 to 8, or this adventure is for levels 5 to 10, or this adventure is for levels, 11 to 14, or whatever. And the thinking was, they explained it right there in the books, that there are certain abilities that certain players have access to at certain levels, especially with magic and spells and things. So, for example, and they would just explicitly explain this, in the beginning, there were not like Aarakocra player characters. There were not like Fairy with Wing player characters. In the beginning, player characters, there weren't winged elf player characters. In the beginning, there weren't player characters that could fly from first level. And so flight was something that, that's a third column spell. Right up there with flight and fireball and lightning bolt, these are spells of the third column. And if you want to know what I mean by column, listen to the last video on magic users. But some of you might think, level. But or teleporting, being able to just teleport home and get things. Like back in the 80s in the original brick and mortar game shop's basement, people would show off to me their spiral notebooks. They didn't just have player character sheets. They had spiral notebooks, and really high level people, this is the stuff I have at home. These are my 5 extra magic swords if something happens to my main magic sword. This is my extra shield, because I can only carry around one at a time. High level parties could teleport home. If something happened to trash out their magic items, they could teleport home. So teleporting, flying, being able to do mass AoE damage, once you have access to the fireball, the lightning bolt, stuff like that, the cone of cold, stuff like that. Once you, there were just certain, or the ability to easily get the dead back, fifth column magic, like raise dead, the ability to, or just the ability to heal a lot, cure serious wounds as opposed to cure light wounds. And so the adventures, the encounters were designed with the idea that the party would have access to certain things at certain levels. Now, with the more modern versions of our favorite game, it's kind of jumbled, it's kind of mixed up. Like, for instance, I've run old school modules for modern type parties, and they're just, the flight thing's a good example. There are times when, getting across a chasm is like a big challenge. Do we have rope? And, what are the walls made of? Would it be safe? Do we have a grappling hook? These kinds of down-to-earth challenges. I'm just going to fly across. Now, the thing is, that exists in fantasy. There are flying characters in fantasy. I mean, when I was 3 years old and in the 70s and saw Super Friends cartoons, I've been a comic book fan all my life. Superheroes fly around. Flying is part of fantasy. But for the challenge of a tabletop role-playing game, though, in terms of balancing the encounter per level as characters advance in power and everything, am I saying to ban first-level flying characters? No. I'm saying be aware of this kind of idea as to what the party can do, what they have access to when you design and balance encounters. That's how they did it in the old days. Okay, so this isn't my answer that I came up with. I'm just sharing what the first generation of writers did and what has worked through the years. And so that's in terms of the abilities that characters have from their spells and stuff. And in terms of magic items, well, hey, the thinking was, I'm not sure I totally agree with it all the time, but what the thinking was if the players have magic items that are too powerful that they shouldn't have at that level, that's the DM's fault. I don't know if I totally agree with that. Sometimes it's really fun to see what people do when they get magic items that are, a little OP and see, it's kind of fun to see what they do with them. But in terms of a pure, how to, balance this encounter point of view, a little more serious, that was the thinking, that the DM was supposed to kind of meter out, certain magic items are higher level than others, that kind of thing. The magic item list in the basic box set was a lot shorter and less powerful than the magic item list in the expert box set. And then, of course, when you got, the advanced Dungeon Master's Guide, then there were like artifacts and stuff. But so that's kind of some thoughts about balancing encounters based on the level of the party. Now, it's not as easy to do with modern games because powers are just all over the place. I think I've told you the story about my friend who, his little joke about what he thinks WotC meetings are like now for designing new products. When they look at what they think people would buy, or what the fans are saying is, here's your superpowers, now go away. That's his little joke about how he thinks those WotC meetings go. But so, for instance, I was running a game for a very low level party. They had just started. It was their first adventure. They were a 5e developed party though, and all of a sudden, this rogue is like, I'm going invisible. Right there in the middle of comma. Okay, and how are you going invisible? Oh, I've got this Tasha's feat. Okay, gotcha. It's a Tasha's feat. So I grabbed my copy of Tasha's, looked it up, made sure it was kosher, whatever. But there are abilities like all over the place. It is harder. When people say that it's harder to DM 5e, it is because of stuff like this. But it could be done if you are determined. John, I'm just going to do 5e no matter what. Go for it. What I'm trying to share with you is how to think about balancing those encounters. Do I think it's harder for 5e? Yeah, I do, but you could still do it. This is kind of the theory of thinking about what the party has access to. And then all right, so our next video today is going to be something new, and then I will have to quit making videos because I got other things to do. Some of it's for you out there in Gamerland, and some of it's some stuff here at home for the fam. But in the meantime, check out our stuff below. There are places. I've got some cool announcements. I just can't make them quite yet. But there are some things coming up, and in the meantime, I will see you around the gaming table.